The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, my name is Christopher Clement. I work in the support department at MicroSurvey Software. And also here today is Jaren Hopfe. He's the desktop product manager, and he'll be the one doing the presentation today. We're just going to be going over some of the new features with StarNet 10 and how you can increase your efficiency with these new features. So I'll pass it off to him. Any questions or anything like that, just use the chat on the webinar on the right side, and I'll be monitoring that chat and answering your questions. And at the end of the webinar, we can answer them live to all you guys. Okay, so I'll pass off to Jared, and here we go.
All right, thank you, Chris. I just want to confirm you can still hear me on that end.
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Just before I talk for a while. Thank you everybody for joining us here this morning or evening, wherever you happen to be. Like Chris said, we are going to go over the new features in StarNet 10 today, and I've actually got a list of efficiency improving features from historical StarNet releases that I thought might make sense to share with you guys today. Some of the things that you may or may not know about that you can use within the program to increase your efficiency in your workflow. So without further ado, this is the two of us here. Like Chris said, my name is Jaren Hopfe. I'm the desktop survey product manager here, which means I look after the requirements for MicroSurvey CAD, embedded CAD, in-CAD, and StarNet. So I'll talk with you guys and come up with ideas for new features, look at the market, determine what's going on with our competitors and that sort of thing, and figure out what we should add in to improve our products. Chris is one of our technical support representatives here, so if you call into MicroSurvey, he's one of the guys that you'll talk to here that'll help you with any problems that you might be having with our software. Okay, to start with the new features for StarNet 10, we have added a 3D network plot. We've added a auto adjust feature. We've added automatic sideshot detection, and we've added an online licensing system. And then here's just a brief list of the things that I'm going to be going over for the efficiency improving features. To begin, let's go over the 3D network plot here. This is an all-new 3D engine in StarNet 10. It's the Hoops Visualize engine, and this is widely adopted in CAD platforms, manufacturing and engineering platforms as well. Autodesk, including AutoCAD and Civil 3D, use this engine to render their 3D models. So we've applied it to StarNet. It seemed to make the most sense. We did some investigation to the right one to pick, and this one fit the bill. We've added 3D error ellipsoids, as you can see in the picture here. What this will allow you to do is you can see your vertical error as well as that horizontal error when you rotate this around. It uses the same exaggeration functionality as the old 2D error ellipses did. And actually something we've found with this 3D network plot is it is really beneficial if you've got like a multi-layer kind of an adjustment, like on different floors of a building or something like that. You can really see the difference between those different networks through this feature. In order to accompany the 3D engine, we've added 3D view controls. We've added a 3D orbit. So much like CAD, you can hold Shift and click your center mouse wheel and move your mouse around to orbit. There's also, if you look on the left side of that new little panel of buttons, the 3D orbit button. When you click that, you will be able to click in that network plot and orbit it around, just like you would in CAD. It functions exactly the same way as in CAD software, so it feels very familiar to work with. We really tried to match that up as best as we could. And there's also a set orbit center button. That's the next one to the right. By default, the orbit center for your project is going to be the center of the project, but you can change it using that set orbit center button. So you can really rotate around an object or a set of objects that you'd really like to see. We've added 13 new preset views, so you can lock in a view. And we've added a lock top-down view button. So this would essentially turn it back into that 2D view if that's what you prefer, and don't have to look at the 3D side of things there. If you're working in a 2D project, this will automatically be turned on because there isn't much sense in seeing the 3D functionality with it. One of our other big new features is this auto adjust feature. So it's an automatic iterative adjustment. Starting off with this, I was taking a look at the workflow through StarNet, and you can kind of see that on the right side there, where you bring in your data after setting your project settings, you set your control points, adjust it, and then if you have any outliers which don't conform with the rest of your measurements, you have to remove them, adjust, remove any more outliers, adjust, remove any more outliers, adjust, and so on and so forth. And I believe some of our tutorials actually cover this scenario. So there is definitely improvement possible there, and it requires multiple adjustments to remove that data that doesn't conform. So what auto adjust does is it basically iterates through that process right there. In order to do that, we will set a maximum standardized residual value. So that's the maximum allowable value in the adjustment. The default value is 3. This is what is typically flagged in StarNet standardized residuals anyway, when you're looking at the listing file for your possible erroneous measurements. We do allow you to increase or decrease that value. Increasing it will decrease the quality of your adjustment because you're increasing the standardized residual values, but it will reduce the number of iterations necessary to complete the adjustment. If you decrease that value to say 2, then it will potentially improve your quality. It might be oversensitive, removing too much data, and it will increase the iterations necessary for that adjustment. Outliers removed per adjustment. So this would be how many measurements are removed each time it iterates through the adjustment. So this is going to adjust adjust your network. It will by default remove 1 measurement. Your top standardized residual value will be associated with its measurement, and that measurement will be removed from the adjustment, and then it'll adjust through again. So you can increase that value. I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing that unless you're sure what you're doing, because sometimes, I don't know, depending on your experience with StarNet, you may have seen this, where you'll have 1 measurement to a point that's got a problem with it, but the opposite measurement going back from that point back to your setup point will have a similar outlier or a similar standardized residual with that. So say you remove 2 at once, you're removing both measurements to that point there and could potentially remove it from your network adjustment entirely. And then we've got a maximum adjustments value. So that's just a limiting factor so the adjustment doesn't continue on forever in a loop. You can increase this. We kind of have a soft cap at 100 adjustments for it. You can increase it past that. You'll have to click out of a warning box, but I really don't think you should need much more than 20 unless there are kind of problems with your adjustment that should be addressed through instrument settings, or even something else you can do with this. You can look at the new listing file section that's created for this, which lists the measurements and the file and line where that measurement is associated. And after this is completed, you can actually go back through and manually remove those measurements from your adjustment. So you don't need to do this auto adjust every time you go through the project. You can click on Start to begin the process. I think that's fairly straightforward, but this stop button here will become active once you start it, and it'll allow you to kill it when it's running, just so that, I don't know, if it's taking too long or if you realize that there's a problem you need to fix or whatever, you can just click on stop and it'll stop it. Or you can click on the X in the top right corner, it'll do the same thing. The automatic Sideshot Detection. We've added a new checkbox in project options under the special tab there. This will work with all of the adjustment types. So this will be your standard adjustment, your new auto adjustment that I just mentioned there, the cluster detect and the data check all take this into consideration. And at this point, it just detects M records that have no redundancy. I would like to expand this out in the future, but it requires a bit more development and possibly some new record types to be created for it. This will take any measurements that have one measurement to a point and no measurements from that point. So that includes all measurement types, including coordinate records. If you have more than one thing to that point, it will not convert it into a side shot. But if it's an M record and it has only one measurement to that point and nothing else, then it will convert it to a side shot record in code. It will not actually edit your DAT file. We don't want to be doing that on you. And the way this helps is it reduces the measurement count for a more accurate chi-squared test when you're going through, because these side shots are not really contributing anything to your network adjustment. They're just going to have high error ellipsoids in this case. And most of the time, they're just going to be kind of check shots or topographic shots or something like that. And so that allows you to easily hide that topographic or other side shot data. Some of the converters may not recognize side shot data when it's imported. You may have a crew that doesn't set side shot measurements when they do them. And it then allows you to more easily focus on your primary traverse and network adjustment. The new online licensing system, we still use the USB keys. They are still a valid form of licensing the software. But now there's also going to be the possibility of using this online licensing for agencies that want to ditch the USB keys. This still requires a little bit of work on our part for the back end. The primary function for including this feature was actually for the demo licenses. With everybody working from home right now, we wanted to be able to extend demo licenses very easily, or give access to people that might be working from home with no access to their USB key at the office or something like that. And another thing this does is it greatly improves the security. Any demo license now has to go through a validation check online, which is encrypted, and it just improves the security so that nobody's really able to hack the system. It is an online activation, as I mentioned, and it requires an internet connection. If you request a demo from MicroSurvey, you'll be provided a license ID and password to plug in to the license activation dialog, which you'll see on the right there, and you can get at that by clicking on Activate License. But that will be provided from MicroSurvey, and they don't come with a standard 10-day demo anymore. You will need to request that from us. Next, I wanted to talk about some of these efficiency improving features in StarNet and historical StarNet releases. FindPoint, I would be very surprised if nobody has used this, but I just wanted to go over it quickly. It finds all records associated with a point. There are a few ways you can get at this one. You can click on the point number in your DAT file where it will be highlighted in red. You can double click on the point number in the listing file, or you can click on the find point button in the ribbon at the top or on the ribbon in the network plot. And it looks like a pair of binoculars. The Control F shortcut that you would use for finding things like on a website or something works for this as well. And there's a couple things it'll do here. It's going to zoom and center on the point in the network plot, and it's going to mark it with a marker. And it'll show all measurements and coordinates at, from, or to that point in the find point panel down at the bottom. You can double click on the measurement in that find point dialog at the bottom to jump to that measurement in the DAT file so that you can edit it or review it. The file and line items, these can be found in the adjusted observations and residual section, and they're also in the new auto adjust section as well, so that you can find your data. Each measurement will show a file and line item next to the standardized residual value. So that's over on the right side there, the top one being that 2:225. The standardized residuals here are marked by an asterisk with anything over 3. This is what I was referring to with the auto adjust, where that's the standard value there for marking any outliers. Down in the bottom right corner of the listing file tab here in project options, you can see the standardized residual radio button there. So that's how you can sort your observations by the standardized residual, and this will allow you to find those top values easier. So that's what you can see here. It's sorted starting at the top, 5.2, then 3.8, 3.5, and 3.1, and so on. So that's what I've done there so that it sorts it that way and you can find your top value easier. And double clicking on that file and line item over on the right side with the colon will actually highlight the measurement in the DAT file. From there, you can actually type the pound symbol to comment out the entire line. The line is highlighted. All you need to do is type that pound symbol. You don't need to highlight it again or click into the line or anything like that. So you can easily double click through these file and line items and comment out the entire line. Or you can use fixity codes to remove the affected portion of the measurement from the adjustment. So if you look at the top of the measurements there on the right, it shows adjusted zenith observations. So what we're looking at here then is zenith values. So the highest standardized residual here is in file number 2, line 225, and it is a zenith value. So that's not the measurement that I have commented out at the bottom, but I do have a zenith value commented out there. So using the standard weighting, which is the ampersand symbol there, we can use 2 of those, which will take the angular value and the distance value and weight them as standard. And then the third one will freely weight that zenith value, allowing it to float in the measurement, or float in the adjustment, sorry. This is exactly the same setup as using the exclamation marks to fix a point or a measurement in this case. And you can apply standard errors to measurements in this way as well. This is effectively what the auto adjust is doing in code. It's not modifying your DAT file again, but it's basically doing that free weight of those measurements in the adjustment. Bookmarks. You may have accidentally clicked one of these and not really known what it was in the past, but what this will do is it'll allow you to go back to different areas of your DAT file that you keep returning to, areas that you've edited and want to go back to, or if you put one at the top of daily files or something like that so that you can skip between them easily, that's a good use for it as well. If you click to the right of the line number, so in this case, line number 22, it will apply one, and you can click again to remove it. Or while you've got the line highlighted, you can hit Control F2 in your or on your keyboard to toggle it on and off. Hitting F2 will move to the next one, and Shift and F2 will move to the previous one. So you can skip between these in your DAT file and just more easily move around in your code. This one I hadn't heard of for a long time, actually. It's multi-line editing. What you're able to do now with this is edit multiple items at once. So it's good for commenting out several lines at once, changing rod heights, and applying standard errors or fixity symbols to several objects in a row. If you'll notice on the right side there, the cursor is very long and encompasses that entire column of measurements there. And that's not a mistake. If you hold Shift and Alt down and press up and down with your arrow keys, what it's going to do is it's going to extend that cursor up or down, and it will allow you to type into all of those columns at once, whether that be spaces so you can fix spacing that you have in your project and make it look neater, or you can change your rod heights like I mentioned there, or your fixity symbols. You can fix several points at once this way. The instrument library, again, this is probably fairly commonly used, but I just wanted to show it to you guys in case you haven't used it. If you have several crews working on a project and have differing instruments, this is a great way to set them up so that you can switch back and forth between those instruments in your project and not need to kind of make any compromises with those. I'd recommend setting up a new company instrument so that it's available in all your future projects. If you just click New Project Instrument over on the right there, it will only be available in that project. And it's very similar to the instrument settings in your project options, but you set an instrument name in this case so that you can use it in inline code later. You set your instrument settings, and remember these are pointing errors, not angular errors that you would see on instrument data sheets. So I've posted a link there, and this video will be sent out to everybody afterwards. But if you visit that site there, you can actually enter in those angular errors from a data sheet for your instrument, as well as typically the way that you would measure points, and this will convert it into these pointing errors to input onto or into StarNet here. Once you've done that, you can use .instrument and then type in your instrument name as an inline code into your project, and that will then switch between those known instrument settings in your DAT files. So say you've got a TS07 and a TS13, different guns, different settings, you can switch back and forth between those and carry on with your project very easily. Coordinate file formatting. So say you've got a project that has two different levels of control. You've got like an outer control ring, so say some pillars or something that you need to measure between, and then you're coming off of those pillars and you're measuring in a control network with nails in the ground. And this will allow you to do that and copy over those coordinates from your primary adjustment very easily into your secondary adjustment. And you go to the Other Files tab in your project options and select that star any input. What that's going to do is after you adjust and click on the Coordinates tab for the coordinates file, they are going to be formatted like C records in StarNet typically are. You can then copy and paste those over into your DAT file, and you can use that multi-line editing thing that I just showed you, and you can choose to fix all of those at once. And then you can adjust your secondary control using the new fixed coordinates. Cluster detection. This is a adjustment type that is the third from the left in the ribbon at the top there. It's the one with the little blue circle and the 3 dots. You can change the tolerance settings for this here in the special tab of the project options. But what this is going to do is it's going to find points within that tolerance and display them for you to potentially, or sorry, flag them so that you can potentially create them as aliases of each other, so it connects those measurements all to the same points. So say you've got a crew that went out and shot the same point as point 1, point 100, and point 1000. Just each time they came back to it, you'd be able to merge them all together in this way. So this is what it looks like once you run it. You can expand and collapse all of those with the buttons at the top left there. That's the ones with the green arrow and the red arrow. The selected point that you have there, you can use the find point on that using the next button over. The following buttons, the next 4 to the right, will allow you to find the point in the network plot, so it'll center it on the point in the network plot. And then it's just zoom controls, zoom in and out, and zoom extents. And to include these points as aliases, I think it's fairly straightforward. You just click on the check boxes there if you'd like to include it, and deselect it if you don't want to include it. The 2 on the right are restore to calculated and restore to saved. So you can see at the bottom there, it's got the save and exit and save and continue. The restore to calculated is going to restore it to its initially calculated values when you first ran this cluster detect routine. And the restore to saved is going to restore to the last saved values using that save and exit or save and continue option. Once you click on save and continue, it will rerun the adjustment with those alias values intact and connect those measurements. And any questions?
Yeah, there's actually a few questions here.
All right.
Let's start with the main one here is when is StarNet 10 coming out?
That's a good question. We're just finishing up, hopefully, our last development cycle on that here, and it should be within the next couple of weeks.
Perfect. Okay. I have another question here about the new online licensing system.
Yep.
Do they need a constant internet connection to run a license like that, or is it just the initial authentication and then it's good for how many days they have left?
You only need it for the initial authentication, and then it is good for 30 days following that, or whenever the license runs out. You'll need to reconnect to internet within 30 days, otherwise it will run out.
Okay. Another question is with the auto adjust feature, does it include cluster detection, or is it just standard adjustment?
It's actually a new adjustment type. I can go back to it here if you want to bear with me for a minute. Sorry, I actually didn't show it on this. Here, that's my bad. Let's go over to the cluster detect where I show that whole ribbon. Okay, so just to the right of the standard adjustment, you can see that new button there with the kind of pinky red A there. That's the auto adjust. It's an entirely new adjustment. You don't need to run it, but it is there if you want it.
All right, perfect. There's one more question here, but I think we're gonna need some more details on his scenario, so I'll take care of that one separately.
Okay.
Okay, and it looks like that's all the questions we have here. Oh, I guess there was one more. Someone said that the presentation, hope it goes well today.
Oh, thank you very much. All right, thank you everybody for joining us here today, and have a great rest of your day.